So let's go ahead and we'll start with our Pledge of Allegiance, and Justin will provide that. And following that, I will do our opening ceremony.
Everyone wants to stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we are grateful for this day. We're grateful that we can gather as a city. We're grateful that we have a city full of wonderful neighbors, and we're grateful for the engagement of the community here in our meetings. We pray that Thou will bless us, that we can understand and love one another. Help us to plan well for the future of the city so that it can be a place acceptable for all who come this way. We say this in the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Alrighty, roll call by Haley.
Commissioner Brandmeier. Commissioner Carbonell.
Excuse me.
Commissioner Heidi Murdoch. Commissioner Justin Wright.
Here.
Chairman Kevin Colson.
Here.
Councilmember Gary Anderson.
Here. So if they're unexcused, is that going on their permanent record? Okay. All right, to start the meeting, we will have a chance for anyone who wants to make public comments. This is not pertaining yet to the items that you've seen on the signs that we'll be having public hearings on, but if you have any public comments, we would ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes, and you can approach the lectern. Nothing burning a hole in your pockets, guys. Okay, we'll move on then. Presentation, I suppose that's by staff, if you guys have some items. Okay. All right, we'll move on then and review and approve, well, we'll at least review our minutes from March 26th, 2024. Haley, did you see, I saw that you shared that on SharePoint, and I think that the changes I make populate for everyone at that same time. So I just did it direct into the document. There were just a couple things, a couple misspellings, and then I highlighted one area where it looked like just a typo, something got disconnected. So those were my only feedback from that. Old friend, welcome back. Good to see you. Justin, did you have anything?
I didn't make comments on them. No.
Okay. And I didn't see any feedback from any of the other commissioners, so we will maybe circle back to that if we get another member to vote on it. So, all right, we'll go. I guess we usually vote to open the public hearing. I suppose we can proceed without.
A public hearing without a vote.
You
You can hold a public
Yeah,
hearing.
you can have a public hearing.
Okay.
And they go into now.
Yes.
We can't vote.
They can vote. They can hold a public hearing.
It doesn't need to go on the whole hearing.
Right. Alrighty. So with that said, we'll go ahead. We have 5 items each for public hearing, and we'll, I think, proceed like we did last time. We'll open each item separately. We'll discuss it. In the event that we do get a quorum, we will vote on items. Otherwise, we will just proceed through each piece. The different items we're going to, in this order, we'll be having a public hearing about a conditional use permit that's been requested, public hearing regarding an update to Municipal Code Title 10, which regards swimming pool ordinance, public hearing updating the public works standards, public hearing regarding Municipal Code Title 10 for a new zone R16 or R6, I suppose, and public hearing regarding Municipal Code Title 7A, the chicken ordinance, a very popular one from last time, has come back. So again, we asked that everyone to limit their comments to 3 minutes. It's not as big of a crowd, so I don't think we'll have a time control issue like we did last time. And then again, ask you to show respect to each other, to the staff, to these guys at least. I mean, I'm just open for comment, I get it, so we'll talk about those things after, but let's go ahead and we'll open the public hearing on the conditional use permit. First, we'll have, oh, well, we can't, right? We can't.
Just to open, do we have to make a motion to open?
Yeah. Well,
No, you
I guess you don't, because you don't have anybody to vote on it, so just say we're gonna hold it.
You just open the public hearing.
Do they have to have a motion to do that? Darren,
What's that?
do they need a motion to open the public?
They
hearing?
just need to state we're in the public hearing for, conditional use permit.
Thank you.
I actually just read about this.
I'd call it a conditional use permit for a new water well.
Okay. All right, we'll open that portion now.
Haley, will you bring up that landscape plan first? And is anybody here from the district tonight? Okay,
Yeah, the project manager, Jesse.
okay, Jesse, glad to see a face.
Oh, yeah.
Jeff Euler. Okay, drag that up so you can see that. So over here on the corner of Green Road and Highway 89, right here is Green Road and Highway 89.
Orchard,
Um,
Jeff. Orchard Drive. Yeah, it's the highway. It's Orchard Drive, actually.
Okay, yeah, Highway 89 is over here. This is the front of the road, thank you. So Weaver Basin Water is proposing to build a new well house or well and a fluoride building, to fluoridate, water that's coming out of that well. And if I say anything wrong, Jesse, just feel free to jump in on this. So the purpose of this well is essentially to create some redundancy in their culinary water system. There'll be a line that goes out and up Peachtree Drive and ties into Mountain Road into their existing water line in Mountain Road. And this creates redundancy in case of emergencies or for whatever reason the system may be down, they can pull water out of this. This is something they've been working on for quite some time. And so there's actually two buildings that will be built. One is the well house itself, and then this fluoridation building, which is a smaller one. I had the sizes of those. This building is 1,500 square feet. This building is 340 square feet. So they're relatively small. Well, before I do that, the buildings are cinder block. There will be a perimeter fence around this property, which is black coated vinyl chain link fence. It looks pretty nice. As far as landscaping is concerned, most of the property is just going to be crushed rock. They're keeping these oak trees, which is right here on this corner. This will be their main access into the property. Go over to that shows the building profiles. Yeah, so this is what the buildings are gonna look like. They're just CMU masonry, pretty standard. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to say. They're expecting this to be online next spring, be built and ready to go. Jesse, do you want to come up and add anything to my comments?
Yeah.
You might talk a little bit about the need for this and.
So I'm Jesse, I'm the project manager representing the district. One thing I will note, we understand this is in a residential neighborhood. So we are making sure that the building, the landscaping, are neutral colors, earth tones to blend in as well as we can with the environment. With the landscape plan, we are trying to keep as much of the existing oak trees and the scrub oak so we can create a natural barrier. for visibility. The black PVC coated chain link fence, what's nice about that is the visibility at an angle is pretty minimal, so we're hoping this blends in and it's not very noticeable. But yes, this well house is used for redundancy, and this will also be a source of clean drinking water in case our aqueduct were to fail and go down. But yeah, I'm here to answer any questions or any concerns that the residents may have. But thank you.
Before we turn it over to the public, I might want to just mention, there was a couple of other pictures on Haley. There was one that had the colors. Well, this is another site plan. Yeah, so these are like the block colors that it shows. I mean, it's hard to picture that on a whole building, but they're earth tone, like Jesse mentioned. And it's probably worth mentioning that on this site, there is still plans for a future Kaysville City water tank. And so that's still to be accommodated at some future date. We don't know when that's gonna be needed, but that'll be far more intrusive than what we're looking at here, so this is pretty minimal. I think that's our comments initially, so we take any public comment.
Please.
What's the cost to the city, if any? Our water rates are already so high.
I don't know.
No cost to the city. This is a Weaver Basin District project. So they're the ones to take the cost of this.
What is the water used for?
What will the water be used for?
This is it's culinary water, drinking
Is it
water.
for Fruit Heights, or is it for Kaysville, or is it Layton?
It's
or all
the existing pipeline in Mountain Road does feed to the tank here in Fruit Heights.
How big is that water line in Mountain Road? I think it's a 12-inch.
24-inch.
24-inch?
And then it reduces down to 18 and then to 16.
So does it just feed the Fruit Heights tanks?
It goes to Farmington.
It goes beyond, right? Okay.
Yes.
So Fruit Heights and Farmington.
Okay, yeah, it's kind of confusing because right in that same area, I think Kaysville was drilling. Is that the same
That-
area?
Weaver Basin drilled the well.
Oh, it's Weaver Basin.
Yeah, Weaver Basin drilled that well.
It just
Yeah.
wasn't clear to me, so I'm just trying to clarify.
All the work that's been done up there on that corner was all Weaver Basin. I'm just saying at some future date, there's still plans to put a water tank up there. But that water tank wouldn't have anything to do with this well. It would be a separate water facility altogether.
That's helpful, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other public comments, questions?
I didn't see any landscaping on the one side, is that facing towards residential? So that's straight over in front.
Go back to that landscape plan if you would.
I mean, the vegetation then. On that west side.
Yeah, so the only vegetation would be right in this southeast corner. Everything else around the perimeter, if I'm seeing this, reading this right, Jesse, is all just crushed rock.
Yeah, it's a remote site, and we're trying to limit the amount of irrigation water we use for remote sites. There's actually some additional trees and scrub, yeah, right there.
So, okay, so there's some here and some here. And you got houses, well, you got one house right here. There's houses pretty close, I mean, there's 2 or 3 houses over there.
Yep.
There's nothing on this side or this side.
So this is an actual pump or you're gonna drill?
It's already been drilled.
It's, okay.
Yeah, the well is all drilled and capped. So now it's just a matter of putting it into working.
Will this be similar to what they have in various places around the Wasatch Front where you can, that the public can actually go and get water?
No. I don't think so.
No, we do have sources at our actual treatment plants where you can get water. But the well houses are enclosed.
You can get a drink at Maverick.
Can I just ask a question? So I think some of the documentation that's sent, it looks like there's already been a contractor selected and awarded, correct?
Yes, that's
So
correct.
so at this point, it's already, basically the city's already agreed to it. It's just a formality at this point that we're going through. Is that correct?
It's, so when we purchased the land from Kaysville City, we overlooked, rezoning. So as part of this, we're looking for a conditional use permit in order to continue with construction.
Okay, thank you.
And that
Is
brought
there a
up
stop order or
that brought up another thing, Justin. This does sit in two different zones, but in both, it's R18 and A1. But we're considering this a quasi-public use, which is a conditional use in both of those zones. So I don't see any point in rezoning it all in one zone. Just leave it the way it is. It's a quasi-public use. And it's not a formality. I mean, you could deny it and then they would have to go back and figure out what they're gonna do, but they need a conditional use approval to get this site approved. That was something that they kind of overlooked. This could have been done a long time ago. But
Yeah, that was just my question because it seems like it's so far along that now we're just looking at it. The contractor's already been awarded.
And as a council, I need to remind you that a conditional use does not go beyond the planning commission. You're the final say-so in that. But you do have the ability to add conditions or discuss things or say, hey, what about this, what about that? So if there's things that you feel like are necessary within reason, then we can consider those things. The site is fully fenced.
I mean, is there any concern about, what's the term? Attractive nuisance, any sort of issue with that, like with kids, that they would be able to access or harm themselves or anything? What are the protections against that?
Yeah, not at all. It's gonna be a 6-foot tall, chain link fence.
Okay.
Yeah. There won't be any,
And the building is
It'll be
completely
like,
locked.
the fencing will be just like padlocked or something, or?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, all packed.
But the building itself is fully enclosed and locked down too.
Yes. Yeah,
So any access to like the water source and the water works themselves is completely enclosed in a building.
Yes, you have 2 separate locks, one for the gate and one for the wheelhouse.
Okay, great. Any other questions or comments from the public?
I have a comment. I would just like, it's my understanding in the city that there are public utilities that often interrupt and excavate in roads without getting proper permits prior to doing so. And so in this conditional use permit approved, I would like some pretty strict language should Beaver Basin choose to excavate or interrupt once construction is completed, some sort of penalty to encourage them to do those permits and not simply just bypass our city.
Yeah, so we actually we have construction on hold right now, so we can.
I'm talking about in the future, once the construction is completed, because we have this in our city, I have an understanding that there are some utilities who bypass the permit and don't seek proper permits and go in and tear up the city. And there's just kind of, we don't do anything about it. And so that's why I'm asking as part of the conditional use permit that there be some poignant language tied to the conditional use that carries a penalty for utilities that are tearing into our public streets if it's not done in a proper order. That's what I'm asking as a resident.
Jesse, the service line up Peachtree Lane, that's still to be built? Or that's already existing? That's already existing. So that's all ready to go too.
Yes, just to make the connection.
When was that installed?
That was
It was installed in that subdivision.
Yes.
When the.
That's right. That's right.
PRV station up on Mountain Road, that's Casey's.
That's right.
Yeah, and I can get an actual date, if you like, but yeah.
It's okay. That's what I was wondering, that I remember that now. Because this was planned for with that building of that subdivision.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So there has been some infrastructure installed in anticipation of this. That was probably at least 10 years ago.
Yeah, it was done when that subdivision was done. Kaysville ran their line down because, and then they ran one under Highway 89, if you remember.
Yes,
So when they installed those tanks, but then
Yeah.
Kaysville sold half that property to Weaver Basin. And there was a line run.
so the lines that would serve the Kaysville future water tank are already in place as well. Yeah, that's nice.
I actually.
It's like old times, we miss you, Brandon. Any other thoughts, comments?
We need you at every meeting to help us remember the past.
Just one other, maybe a question on point of order, with no quorum here, and the conditioner for you to pass it has to wait for another.
Yeah,
Till we have quorum.
yeah.
And then anything that we discussed today that requires a vote have to be tabled. And until you get that.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll still receive public comment, we'll have our kind of inner discussion, and then whenever we have a quorum, we will vote on the items.
Is there anything else the planning commission would like us to look at?
Not from my perspective.
No, me
It's
neither.
pretty straightforward to me. With that, I think we'll close that portion of the public hearing. And I think, Justin, you didn't have any real comments, it seems straightforward to me. I think I would be inclined to disapprove and move forward on that, but, anything else?
No, I'm good.
Gary, anything else from you before we move to the next issue? Okay. Let's, we'll go ahead and we will open the public hearing now on the municipal code Title 10 swimming pool ordinance. And to open that up, is there any commentary, Darren? Looks like you have some input for us here.
So, a couple years ago, we had this before the planning commission, and we wanted to use our setbacks from property line. At that time, we were talking 6 to 8 feet, and then with a different setback on the side. We went to council. Council just said, let's just do a 10-foot setback all the way around, and as long as we maintain 20 feet from a property resident on adjacent properties. We've had several residents come in and ask if we could change the setbacks in the backyards to an 8-foot setback. With the yards getting smaller in the back and stuff like that, it's making it harder and harder to have pools installed. We looked at different cities, and Kaysville and Farmington, and those they're 8 and 6 feet or what their setbacks are. So as a staff, we've kind of went through and looked, and we would just recommend to the planning commission that we change the setback to 8 feet from a property line with a minimum of 20 from a neighbor's dwelling. So still, it's 28 feet from a neighbor's home is where it could be, so.
Thank you. Open things up for the public if you guys would like to comment. I know we've been a little informal, but preferably if you could approach the lectern and announce your name and then share your thoughts, comments.
I might be the only one.
Please.
I'm one of those residents that brought this up.
Okay.
I'm new to the area.
They would like you to state your name and address.
Yeah.
Okay, Don Benedict, 164 South Village Way. Recently moved into the area and putting a pool in my backyard. I started the project already, which has kind of expedited this, and we're disappointed we don't have a full quorum to be able to make a decision to get that in front of the committee. And for me, as a new resident to Fruit Heights, I Googled 84037 setbacks and started my project with an 8-foot expectation, only to find that 10. And it seems like a silly 2 feet, but 2 feet makes a big difference in big space you have to put by a pool, setting back, and it actually ends up tightening up closer to your home than the back of your lot. And I completely understand and appreciate the distance from another dwelling and keeping that intact. But I think as Darren had said, and I think he stated it well, the narrower yards has made it really very difficult to, the investment you put into a pool to get one that is wide enough or depth of however you're doing it moving forward. And just asking it to be in line with cities that are around us. Kaysville's 8, 6 feet in Farmington, Layton is 4. So we're really kind of went the pendulum to the far end. I think it was unintended, not realizing what 10 feet really means, but the spirit of it is keeping that distance away from a dwelling. So asking the planning commission to support the 8 feet variance.
Thank you. And welcome to the city, glad to have you.
Thank you.
Any other feedback, thoughts from the public? Please.
Hey, Brendan, 1350 East Oakmont Lane. I can certainly, I don't know if the word is sympathize with this gentleman, but I think we need to be careful in, people move to Fruit Heights and not to Layton and not to Farmington for various reasons. So I don't know if modeling our city after some of those others is the best approach. Secondly, I would like to know, I've got nothing against the pool. Hell, I wish I could afford one. What does that setback do? Right now, obviously I'm here for the proposed rezoning issue. If we change that setback, does that mean that whatever these guys build on that place next to me, they can put it within 8 feet of my fence?
Oh, is that a
Yeah,
question?
that's a question.
Well, you're able to present your thoughts. It's not really a question and answer session for us, but we will take all of your thoughts into consideration as we make our decision making here today.
Okay.
Well, again, if we have a quorum at any point today. Thank you, sir. Any other comments, questions, salutations? Please.
Matt Van Dremelen, 1389 East, 650 North. I'm also new to the city, so happy to be here. It's finally have our dream house and exactly where we've always wanted to be. It seems like a reasonable setback. I think my neighbor built a big, very large barn right next to us, and that's 10 feet, and it still feels far enough away. And with the swimming pools in the ground, not out of the ground, it seems like it would be a reasonable thing and not intrusive to your neighbors at all. So I think that'd be a reasonable adjustment to the zoning.
Thank you. Any further thoughts? We'll go ahead and close the public comment for this portion. My personal thoughts, so I'm surprised how long ago that was. It seemed like just a couple months ago we were talking about this, but it's been a little bit. I think when this first was before the Planning Commission in October of 22, I think we had it at like 5 feet at that time, and I think it got expanded. So, at that time, I had reviewed the ordinances throughout Davis County. I do understand the comment. We're not necessarily trying to be everybody else, but I think it's helpful to look to other cities to see what's been tried and proven. You don't. I grew up in Houston, where if it starts flooding, you're worried about how close that pool is. So I understand that concern, but I do think from the start we made sure that there were some key language about distance from a neighbor's dwelling, their primary, their home dwelling, distance from certain slopes. I thought those were kind of the key issues. So I would be open to pushing it back to 5 feet. I think 8 feet is plenty, personally.
Yeah, I got no problem with that.
And so we don't have a quorum at this point, so I think we'll share some of the thoughts. Again, we'll make sure that's part of the record for our next meeting and discuss some of these thoughts.
Question, when you say quorum, and this is just for my learning purposes, then, is that now another month before quorum can get together, or?
So we have our meetings once a month. Occasionally, there's opportunities for, what's that? Okay. So we'll see when we're able to get it, but.
Do we know when the next meeting is scheduled for?
May 16th, and he says.
Okay, so it's gonna be sooner next. All right, so it won't be, I mean, that's kind of we have interesting timing this month because we're doing it kind of a week later than we usually do, and we're avoiding, it sounds like we're just avoiding year-end stuff of school and Memorial Day and all that, so, yeah, so we'll be back here in a couple weeks then. So unless, Gary, unless you had some guidance or feedback on this, I'll go to the next.
No, I think I'll just refrain from giving my opinion. I don't think it's maybe not the best idea to push that here in planning commission. Maybe ask questions to help inform, but I'm going to try and limit my opinions during planning commission.
Cool. All right, no. Because you will have your chance at city council, I suppose, right? All right, great. Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and we'll now move on to the public hearing regarding the update to the public works standard. We'll start with some feedback from Lane and then open it up to the public for commentary.
So public works standards haven't been updated since 2018. And Fruit Heights staff and Jones and Associates sat down and we really fingered through them. And I could go on and on about what was changed, but I mean, it ranges from ADA ramps to be in compliance with the state as far as sloping and the truncated domes, the placement of them. And the drawings, we cleaned up a bunch of the drawings, and just what's required from developers on developments and city projects as well. So, do you have any questions for me on it?
And if I can add to that, what Lane's saying, this was a comprehensive update. I mean, there was a number of meetings with Jones to go over, and they're working with a number of other cities and doing these kinds of things. So we have the advantage that they see what else is happening out there with other cities and things, and we're able to kind of take advantage of that. But this is a comprehensive overhaul of our public works standards. So there's been a lot of thought and work go into this to get to this point.
Yeah.
No, I think I may have some questions after the public hearing portion. I want to get some, I don't know, this was not like bedtime reading. I don't know who dug into this, but let's just say my kids know when I'm reading stuff that's beyond my comprehension, and they know I'm pretty grumpy when I'm reading through stuff like this because I don't understand half of it. But open for public comment on this the public works standard update. Any burning thoughts, questions?
If you will indulge your question, seat.
I will.
Okay, on the public works standards, does this have anything to do with the enforcement of city ordinances on property not kept now? Does it have anything to do with that?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
And just, I say this often, feel free to pose questions to staff about some of the details on these items. If you're kind of posing questions to the commission, we treat that as a rhetorical question. We're not really here to answer those questions, but definitely the staff can kind of opine on those sorts of things. Any other public commentary, thoughts, questions? We'll go ahead and close the public hearing on that. I had a handful of thoughts or just questions on language. Not too much, because again, a lot of this stuff is, my dad really wanted me to be an engineer, but it wasn't in the books for me. So page 9, this is in the 3.05 subsection I3. It talks about temporary turnarounds. It says drainage onto adjacent property must be by written approval easement of adjacent property owner. Do we need to clarify the extent? I mean, there's going to be some obvious natural drainage that's happening. I would assume this is a certain quantity of drainage. I just didn't know, do we need to clarify that? Is that necessary? Probably not. Aaron's like, no, this has been my realm for years. I know we don't need to mess with that. Okay, so that was one thought. The next one, section 4.01 sub B. It says contractor, including all subcontractors, must be licensed within or with the state of Utah. My only thought there is there's different levels of licensure. We obviously want to make sure that the proper licensure with the proper, I mean, you don't want someone acting as a general who only has a handyman license. So I would just clarify that there needs to be the requisite level for what work is being done. Again, I don't think that's going to be an issue, but.
We do require that with all our Colombian for insurance.
Right, okay. Other than that, let's see. I think that might be it. Let me just double check. Okay, and kind of later in Appendix A, this is talking about like the groundwater rainfall, like the drainage ditches and the drain systems and all that. And there's on page A5, which is 28 of the PDF, there's times where we're talking about a 10-year storm event versus a 100-year storm event. I'm just making sure, I've only ever heard of 100-year storm events. I assume there's obviously going to be 10-year, 50-year, 100-year, 200-year, 1,000 years or whatever. Just making sure that's not a typo, that it shouldn't be 100-year versus 10-year.
Oh, that's how engineers design and engineers.
Okay.
They take all those factors.
Okay, that makes sense. I just wanted to confirm on that. Other than that, I think that's all I had. Let me just scan through. Again, this was educational.
Oh, the only comment I had, I guess I didn't realize the whole thing was updated. There is a red line still in the document sent to us on page 11. So when I scanned through it, I assumed that was the only change. I'll enjoy the 123 page reading.
Yeah, you got some more work to do.
Yeah.
Page 11, you said?
Yeah, page 11 has a red line under C1, C2.
Yeah, there you go.
I was hopeful that was all.
So I'll just give you a heads up. The changes on this are very few. There's some state requirements that we have to fill.
Right.
With the stormwater, all the ADA, handicap ramps, and those kind of things. We needed to update to what is the current requirement. So we have those. Also with the storm drain systems, we have LID going back elements that we have. So those are our biggest changes. There are changes in the wording, but not a whole lot. It's more with the drawings and those things.
Okay, that's helpful. I had one last thing, just a slight typo. This is page 81 of the PDF. It's under the conductive tracer wire for pipe installation. 3.3, just correct it should say restoration, it's just missing a T. But not substantive, just a little typo. But yeah, that's it for me. I mean, I think this will be, again, another pretty straightforward vote, in my opinion, once it comes for the whole forum. Anything else before we move on to the next? Okay, we'll go ahead and proceed to 5.4, the public hearing regarding the new proposed zone R1, is it R16 or R6?
I'm calling it R16.
Okay, I'll roll with you in there.
I feel for you guys having to read all that. I had an attorney today call me this morning, says, I need you to review this 110-page document, be ready to comment by 3 o'clock.
Oh, gosh.
So I feel your pain on that. Let's just go back and talk about how we got to this ordinance proposal. The planning commission, at their last planning commission, denied a rezone request to rezone some property over on 650 from R112 or RS12 to R3. They sent that recommendation to the city council, and the city council also denied the rezone request. And then the city council at their last meeting directed the staff to come up with a new zone, a new 6,000 square foot zone. We have no idea whether there's no request on the table for an R6 zone because one doesn't exist today. So any discussion about rezones does not have anything, we're not talking about that tonight. We're just talking about, here's what we were asked to do as staff, here's what we're proposing. And so that's what this public hearing is about, is anything to do with this particular zone. And so I'd kind of like to just go through this and talk about it. And I haven't seen these red lines in here, so maybe just interject those when that comes up. But I want to just read the purpose. It's pretty straightforward. The R16 residential zone is intended to provide for small lot, higher density, single family, and multifamily residential development. This zone aims to promote more affordable housing options. That last sentence is very deliberate. This zone aims to promote more affordable housing options. I mention that because this gets us more affordable, but it doesn't get us to what the state of Utah is pressuring on this city and every city to be affordable. So I make that clear, is that this does not create affordable housing according to the state of Utah's rules and regulations that they want all of us to abide by, but it certainly would make things more affordable than other options. Permitted uses would be single-family dwellings, so that would be one house on one 6,000 square foot lot, or multifamily dwellings, which would be multiple homes connected to each other with common wall construction. I'll cover that just a little bit more in a second. Conditional uses, home occupations, public and quasi-public uses, like the well house, residential facilities for the disabled. Under area and frontage regulations, so the minimum lot size for a detached single-family dwelling would be 6,000 square feet. So if you have one home, one lot, 6,000 square feet, no more than 4 units may be attached with common wall construction. So you could have up to 4 units, boom, 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 side by side, all attached with common wall construction. The overall density would not exceed 6 units to the acre. So even if you had common wall construction, you wouldn't have any more homes on the property than you would have if you just had individual lots, individual 6,000 square foot lots. So it doesn't increase the number of homes, it just allows them to be put in a more compact area. It just gives more flexibility. The minimum lot width measured at the front setback line is 60 feet. On a corner lot, that would be 80 feet. Front yard setback, 20 feet. Side yard setback on both sides would be 8 feet. And then just scroll down. Should be another page there. Yeah, there you go. Side yard setback on a corner lot would be 20 feet adjacent to the street. And then the rear yard setback would be 20 feet. And then accessory buildings would be the same as what we have in our other zone, is that you've got to be at least 6 feet behind your home. And if you're at least 6 feet, you can be 5 feet to the side of rear property lines for an accessory building. And then under height regulations, no building should be greater than, I put 30 feet in there, and it looks like
That's
somebody's
my
written
bad.
35.
Minnesota matches 8, 10, 12.
I'll tell you where I was headed with 30, and I'm not set on this, but I'd like to avoid the potential for a 3-story building. And so 30, if you look at 10 foot, average of 10 feet per floor, you could not get a 3-story building with a 30-foot maximum height. 35 feet, you might be able to make it happen. I'd like to limit this because it's a smaller lot zone that we don't have big buildings coming out of the ground, that it would be limited to 2 stories. That was my only thought in going down a little bit. That's totally flexible. That was just the reason.
Does that include going below grade?
That would be from the grade to the peak of the roof. So that's where you measure it, is from the grade of the ground to the peak of the roof.
Could they fit it in? Could they put a 3-story in if they dug down?
The basement isn't considered a story.
Yeah, the basement wouldn't be considered a story.
There you go.
You wouldn't be able to get, with the roof pitch and stuff, you wouldn't be able to get it on 30 feet. 35, I don't know, maybe not. Depends on how flat the roof is. That's just a thought. And this is all, I mean, this is first look at this. This is all of the discussionary phase at this point, but this is, that's the idea. That's the starting point.
Cool.
So with that, I would welcome any public comment, answer any questions. Scroll back down or to the top.
This creates an R6 option in the zoning process for our city. Is there an expectation from the state that we would use it, have to use it? Is there a penalty to the city if it's not used?
In our general plan, we put an affordable housing element in our general plan. And in that plan, we said that we were going to do certain things to create affordable housing. One of those things that we said that we would do is that we would look to create a new zone that created, that would allow for more dense housing and create affordable housing options. I think this gets us partway there, but it doesn't get us all the way there. I'm not sure we could get all the way there with what they're requiring. But that's kind of irrelevant. But I think the intention is that if you create a new zone, you expect it to be used. Now, one of the thoughts may be, do you go in and identify areas of the city it could be used? That would be another step that you could take that we haven't discussed yet.
And my understanding was the general plan had some areas identified as potential high density housing or affordable housing, whatever we're calling this. And this area was not originally part of it.
Well, the new general plan does not identify areas, if I'm not mistaken, Darren. It does not specifically identify areas to be considered for affordable housing. Is that right? The previous plan did, this one does not. So we would need to go in and retrofit and do that.
What about at the golf course? the development in the golf.
Yes, that would be the exception, that there was some consideration for that golf course. I see that as so long-term that, I don't even think about in those terms, but you're right. They did, I mean, were the golf course to ever be developed, there was plans in that showed higher density housing along with commercial potential. Yeah, we'll all be on to our next life when that happens.
Please.
Like, I guess I don't know that, so we can comment.
If you would, why don't you just come up to the mic and state your name, and so we're doing it by the book, so.
Okay, but then I can ask you.
We'll keep him up here.
I'll stay right here.
I'm just confused of how this works. My name's Linda Stapp, 1355 East Oakmont Lane. So the whole reason that this is being done is for the property that Joe Christensen is wanted the zoning changed for. And so the two questions I have is, one is I am opposed to having just create a zone just for this property. Because in the future, this is going to happen at many, many properties. And so as soon as somebody comes to buy a house and it's old and they want to tear it down, then we're going to go through this again, and we're going to go through this again. And so I want the city to rezone places that this could happen so that we don't have to go through this every single time. Because that's one of the problems is people come in, they buy a lot, they want to live in the city, and then all of a sudden it's going to be rezoned, and they're going, well, I didn't want that rezone. I didn't buy the lot thinking that this is going to be zoned. And so, and last week, the person said, we have to protect the developer, and we have to protect not last time, the last meeting. We have to protect the developer, and we have to protect the citizens. And I'm thinking, why do we have to protect the developer? The developer is not part of this city. I mean, maybe the developer we have to help with developing parts of our, but we don't have to protect them. And then Joe said that the city came to him and asked him to develop this property in multifamily units and he wasn't going to do that. And so if the city is presenting these properties to be zoned and to be built in, multifamily, and they're presenting this to developers, and then they're going to get angry at the neighbors when they oppose it, I'm thinking, wow, this city, we need to have a voice in this, saying, why should the planning or the, he said Brandon came to him.
That's why I'm here.
I know, this is what he said. He said, Brandon came to me and asked me to put all of these houses on the land. And I'm thinking, why as the city manager, why does he have that power to be able to do that when all of us have lived here and we have bought the land and and so I'm thinking, I want the whole city rezoned. I don't want just this one piece of land rezoned. I want the whole city rezoned so that we know what's going to happen before it happens, so that Brandon can't come in and say, hey, rezone this because the city wants it. I don't think that that's fair to us as citizens at all. So that's one thing.
Your point is you want to identify areas in the city that the zoning could be considered for.
Yes, R6 can be considered for, because right now, it's, apparently, right now, all of the zoning that we thought was going to be zoned, it can just be rezoned at Brandon's proposal.
Brandon's here, he can come up and speak for himself, but I'm pretty sure the city did not request Joe Christensen to rezone his property to multifamily.
That's what.
They approached the city with this originally.
That's
Just,
what.
just as a reminder, we try to keep the comments to 3 minutes,
But
so.
that's what he said.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
Thank you.
that's my first thing. My second thing.
And
is-
to be fair, and maybe someone could yield their time to you, I've had that happen before, thank you. So just, and this is a reminder for everyone, because we were here till 10:30, 10:45 last time, we do have to keep things going, we have to keep things moving.
My second thing is you said 6 units per acre.
Mhm.
He doesn't
Yeah,
have,
I know.
he doesn't have an
Doesn't
acre.
have an acre.
No,
He doesn't have an acre, so how can he put 6 units on an acre? That's
he's,
all.
yeah.
That's all. Can I?
Thank you. Please, come on up.
Cynthia Dagers at 624 Quail Ridge. I also wrote down that you said, Jeff, that no more than 4 units. So I'm confused. No more than 4 units for this proposed R16, but 6 units to the acre. So I'm really confused.
On that page right there.
So you could have, for example, you could have 4 units that were attached and 2 units that were attached somewhere else on the property, or 4 units that were attached to 2 lots. It could just be a combination of different things.
So is it no more than 4 units?
Share a common wall.
They share a common
That
wall.
share a common wall.
So
Okay.
4 units could be attached with so 4 units side by side, all attached with common walls, so like 4 townhomes.
Okay. And so it could be 6 units to the acre. But if they don't have an acre, then you can't have 6 units.
Well,
Because you mentioned, you said there's flexibility, and I'm like, flexibility with what? Are you talking more units? Are you talking flexibility with the road, with the green space? What are you talking
well,
about?
the flexibility is using attached units.
So no more than
Having
4
more
attached.
space, yeah.
And then you could have 2 attached. And then that would give you more green space. So that's the flexibility. But if he doesn't have an acre, can't have 6 units.
He could still do this. He could still do this because when you typically plan for, you're gonna have a public street and utilities, and that takes space out of the lot, where he's not doing any of that. He could still have 6 units because he doesn't have any public road or anything on it. I mean, I've run the numbers. He could still do it.
But the city ordinance says, no, that he has to have an acre.
No, it doesn't say he has to have an acre. It says he has to, the maximum dwelling density can't exceed 6 units to the acre.
Okay, tell me how that's different from if he doesn't have an acre, he can't have 6.
Let me grab my phone and just do a quick calculation and kind of show you how this works.
A question.
One second, let's let Jeff kind of finish his comment, and then we'll have you, sir, come up next and share your thoughts.
I'd also note though, that we're not talking about a specific individual or specific lot right now. We're just talking about.
Yeah, we're not. Yeah, keep that in mind. That's important. So let's use his example as the example. And I've got a problem too with somebody saying we're doing this just for one guy. Because I don't like that idea. But I don't believe we're doing this for, I mean, if we're gonna do this, we intend to use it in other places. So let's just use his example just to show you how the numbers work, okay? He's got 85 hundredths of an acre, okay? So I take 85 hundredths and times that by an acre, and I get, an acre's 43,560, by the way. That gives me 37,026 square feet. That's what he has to work with, okay? 37,026 feet. Now I divide that by 6,000. That's the maximum that you can use, and I get 6.1. Rounded off to 6.2. He could put 6 units. Now let's back that back up. Let's take that same 85 hundredths, and we're at 37,000. Now he has to put in a public road. Okay, so now you take out 30% for a public road. Now he only has 30,000 square feet, and I divide that by 6,000. He can only put in 5 units. So that's the difference. That's where a little bit of flexibility comes in. If he had to put in a public road to this property, he wouldn't be able to do what he's proposing. But he would be able to do, because this is just a private driveway into a lot. So that's how the numbers work out. And you can see that if there's a public road involved, you're only going to get 5 units to the acre, not 6. But it does create, every situation is different, every property is a little bit different. But if you're going to allow attached units, if you're going to give that flexibility, you need to have a gross density, a gross dwelling density. It just allows for some flexibility, and it frankly allows for some affordability. I don't think that those attached units are any cheaper than 2 units that sit on 6,000. The selling price is the same, but there is an efficiency to be had in the construction cost. And so hopefully he can sell those units for a little cheaper.
Right.
He could.
As using this example, Jeff, what was proposed for this example were, I can't remember the term, houses that are
Condos?
No.
Oh.
Anyway, this allows him to change his plans and put in 4 units that are connected.
Say that again. It allows him to what?
To put in 4 units that have a common wall.
He could do that, or he could do 2.
But he wasn't proposing that. You remember, he was proposing 3 separate buildings.
But it would allow.
But it
Yes.
would allow him to come and change his mind.
This would allow.
That we have seen so much in Davis County. A developer comes in and changes everything.
He can change his mind up to the point that he presents something to the planning commission, and that something is approved. Once that's approved, that's it. He can't come back and change his mind again. He can change his mind anytime between now and when we approve the project. Once the project's approved, that's it. It's set in stone with whatever was approved.
Okay, but if he comes to the planning commission and he says he wants 4, that's allowable.
Yeah.
So how can the planning commission deny? That's the big problem. The planning commission can't deny it.
No.
As long as he's following the ordinance.
Yeah.
We need to make the ordinance.
But again, now you're talking about hand building this for one person. I'm not trying to do that here. We're not talking about one guy.
Well, it's the same anywhere in the city that.
Yes.
That the planning commission says. That.
They would be allowed to have, this would allow up to 4 attached units.
And just as a point of order, we're kind of descending into a conversation. The intent of the public hearing is to have one at a time commentary. So we're going to revert back to that proper procedure. And I understand there's a lot of questions, there's a lot of concerns. there's a lot of love on this topic. I know there's that, but so let's kind of go back to the procedure. If you have a comment, please approach the lectern and let us know your name. As long as you're not like interrupting someone else's comment. So this gentleman will allow him to come in, and if you have a comment, if you have a point of clarification. Sure, but we do need, essentially, what this is, we'll be here at 10:30, and again, I'm here for you guys. But we do need to keep this tidy. We need to respect kind of the flow of conversation so everyone has their chance. And I would encourage, again, we talked about this last time, to the extent your comment is duplicative of another comment, maybe you come up and say, I agree with this gentleman. Because we know a lot of the concerns, we've talked about a lot of these things, and we appreciate those thoughts. But again, we do still have 2 items of business to get through. So if you could abide by that kind of procedure, that'd be great. Sir.
My name is Dale Kunkel, 1624 Old Lake. Remembering back to I believe it was March 23rd, Planning Commission meeting. And if I recall correctly, I believe Commissioner Murdoch, Commissioner Moss, and I can't remember if Commissioner Wright, I don't want to lump people in, but there were at least 2 commissioners who were insisting on a transitional zone to be established. And I believe that's how we came to this R16. Lots of discussion about the master plan and that it had, affordable housing identified, now it didn't. And if I remember correctly, Joe Christensen's project set aside, the insistence of this body was that a zone is the R3 with a conditional use agreement didn't quite meet the standard, but that what they would like to see is a zone that could be used uniformly throughout the city and potentially be applicable to Joe Christensen's current project. Just a little bit of, from my understanding, so that is my statement. I believe we are here because this commission or members of this commission requested that this zone be created for current and future use for the city. I feel embarrassed as a resident right now with the gentleman who has come trying to get a swimming pool installed, and the audacity of the owners of property in this city. Nobody seemed to have issue whatsoever about a swimming pool. Well, there was some comments about swimming pool, but it goes back to my comments that I made on the 23rd. Everybody was okay with doing whatever they wanted when it came to chicken coops and the number of chickens on their land, but they want to dictate to other people how they can develop their land as well. And so tonight's meeting, the point of it is to approve a zoning ordinance that will allow for more affordable housing in our city from now and in the future. And I'd appreciate it if we can allow discussion around the usefulness of that zoning to continue. Appreciate the time and of the commissioners, and I definitely appreciate the time of the citizens and the residents who have come here. I publicly encourage people on Facebook and in different places to be involved. I truly believe that more decisions that impact our daily lives happen at this level and with the Water Commission and with the school board than any federal election ever does. And so I appreciate you. My final comments, I know I've taken a long time, but exactly 1 week ago in the city council meeting, this exact item was on the agenda and none of you were here, not one of you. You could have all commented to the people who are ultimately going to make the decision. All these people do is create zoning ordinances. The person who's gonna approve Joe's thing, or the people who are gonna approve Joe's things, y'all missed out on talking to them. And there'll be another meeting that you'll get.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. So we are up on time, but I do appreciate your comments. All right, any other comments, please? You can approach the lectern. One second, excuse me, I understand this is a high emotion issue. Let's continue to proceed with the protocol as far as who's speaking at what time. And we will continue forward, we'll get through this, I promise. Okay, please.
So understand, you have 4 units on one of these plans, you can do that as a 6-foot wide lot. And then if you have another 2 or that could be another 6-foot wide lot, is that what I'm understanding from the front yard? Or is it 60 feet per unit?
60 feet.
Minimum front yard?
Would be 60 feet wide, would just be for one lot. If you have multiple attached units, obviously, that's gonna need more than 60 feet.
Right. But one lot, but if I did like, if I was a developer and I had like 2 lots, like two homes together, two connected, each one of those would be 60 feet. Right, but every time I do a new building, right?
Well, I don't know if I'm totally understanding what you're saying.
If I did 5 units, each one of those are gonna be 60 feet wide.
Not attached.
If they're not attached.
Right,
If they are attached, I could technically put them all on one.
No.
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 It need to be 60 feet wide per unit, is that what you're saying?
At a minimum. But what I'm saying is that 60 feet wide is dealing with, if you have one lot, it needs to be at least 60 foot wide. If you have multiple units attached to each other, they've got to be on a lot that's at least 60 feet wide. It can be more than that, but at least 60.
That new lot.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask, just to clarify from my own understanding, so the way that I understood it, I just want to make sure I'm correct here, if you put 4 units with a common wall, you could put 4 units with a common wall on a lot that has 60 feet of frontage on the street, correct? That's what I understood, I just want to make sure I understood correctly.
Well, it's not gonna fit. I mean, you would never get that fit. I mean, the house would be.
Sure.
Yeah, it wasn't, I mean, theoretically.
Theoretically, the way that it's written, the way that I understand it.
Yeah, it's just not practical.
Sure.
But the way that it's written, yes.
That's how I understood it.
That was my question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could.
Yeah.
It could, but you're not, it's just gonna be way too narrow.
Yeah. Please, sir.
Matt Van Dermelen, 1389 East, 650 North. I'm actually the only other property owner in the Joe Christensen subdivision that was developed. And I apologize for not being here for the last few meetings because my kids had a wonderful opportunity to study abroad in Spain. So we're over there for a 3-month stint. I came back just this week for a quick convention. So a couple of things have been misrepresented. I've sent a letter to most people, specifically on the Joe Christensen lot. I do want to make it clear that that property had been proposed to me as I purchased one of those units, that those were going to be single family lots, all 4 of them. And when I'm someone who I am an engineer by trade. I've started a new business separately, but my background is engineering and I used to work for Ivory Homes Development. And so when I built in the city, understanding what the zoning laws were before you build to protect your own property rights is important, and also the master plan. So I do think it's important for the city to create a master plan. I think creating any new zone needs to therefore update the master plan of where these zonings would fit. So I think that that's all in line. As far as this zone goes, I appreciate that a smaller zone is this seems adequate because there isn't anything transitional within our city. So speaking outside of the Joe Christensen zoning change, which I am opposed to, obviously that's not what we're talking about today. A couple things on here that I think do need to be changed. I appreciate the 30-foot rather than the 35-foot. Having very narrow, very, very tall, 3-story above grade floors would be quite a sore eye for our community. I also think that it's interesting that we have an ordinance saying that a swimming pool has to be 10 feet from a property line, a barn or shed has to be 10 feet from a property line, and we have an 8-foot property line on both setbacks. Most other cities, when I was working for Ivory Homes Development, when you're talking about lower density, usually have like a 12-foot and 8-foot. So there's a minimum of 20 feet between properties, right? I think it's kind of funny that we have an ordinance that you can do a home closer to a property line than you can a swimming pool, which is crazy. I mean, if you've been down to Lehigh and you see those homes just stacked up and you could hand butter across the window to your neighbor, just feels out of line for Fruit Heights. So I might like to see some adjustments on that. I also think that to the point that 60 feet and you could put up to 4 units on one area is, does make for some very narrow housing. And obviously that might be an extreme setting, but I could see a situation where you're getting very, very narrow, very tall, unsightly looking property within our, so I think that looking at like that side yard setback, making sure that we're not putting units too close to each other, and that there's a minimum width distance and side setbacks so that this does fit. The other thing that I'd like to see changed on this zoning specifically is what can be done, like what properties can be put into this new zoning. Because if you allow this to be developed, I mean, if you have a neighborhood with all 1-acre lots and then one person right in the middle of that neighborhood decides to put in a 6,000 square foot lot and rezone that one little area, all of a sudden you start having a hodgepodge of zoning within our community, which I don't think is the best option. So having a master plan updated of where this is going, and then having at least a discussion of, to be rezoned, it has to be at least a minimum project of this size. So you're not having a bunch of 1-acre lots with one in the middle of a 6,000 square foot lot. Seems like it would be unsightly for our city, and zoning laws do protect all of us. And so I appreciate the efforts here. I really like that you put in the 4 units maximum, because you see these rows and rows. So I think this is a good start. I think that it's not there yet as far as the zoning requirement. And I also think the zoning master plan needs to be changed. I'm not going to be here for any further comment for the next 6 weeks to finish this study abroad. But so I won't be able to make any further comment on Joe Christensen lab. My personal opposition to that is just want to be noted.
Great, thank you, sir. Any other comments?
I'll just comment, just one thing is that the 8-foot side yard setback is the same as what we have in our R18 zone. And that's been used several times in the city already. So that this wouldn't be out of character with other setbacks that we're currently using.
Any other public comments on this matter?
Brandon Green, 495 West, 300 South, Layton, Utah. I have a piece of property near a bridge that's by an ocean, if you'd like to buy that property. I never once told Joe Christensen to come in. But with that being said, people have property rights. We all have property rights. And I think we have to remember that rights are rights. Whether you decide to develop, whether you decide to have chickens, whether you decide to own whatever. So we need to protect those rights. And I don't disagree, and I don't necessarily agree with everything that's been said here tonight, but I can, for a surety, tell you that Brandon Green did not tell Joe Christensen to come in and build a bunch of condos. Joe Christensen approached Jeff Euler and myself with the idea. And as a city, that's what we do, is we accommodate.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, we'll go ahead and close the comments on this piece. I mean, I was already, when we had our last meeting, I was willing to vote in favor. And in fact, I did vote in favor of the rezone for the Joe Christensen property. And this is not about the rezone of the Joe Christensen property here, but at that meeting, as Mr. Kumpel said, there was the expression of, hey, we have a huge drop from R18 to R3. And in fact, Clark had already prepared his own R16 at that time and was interested in approaching that. And I know that was, Justin, I think you were in favor of that. I know Heidi was. And I think this is a nice middle ground for opportunities to add some more affordable housing options. Again, we're not going to beat the state's requirements, but I see this as an opportunity for an aggregation of marginal gain. We can get closer to the goal of making available more affordable housing through this sort of option. This is not, I mean, I find it comical personally about, oh, well, this R16 has never existed. Well, R18 didn't exist before it was created. R110 didn't exist before it was created. R112 didn't. I mean, if we were having this conversation in 1939, I'm sure the 100 people in the city would have said, what on earth were you thinking? Why would you ever allow a residential home in this agricultural area? Cities develop, and we need to be willing to open up our city to opportunities that are reasonable. And I think R16 opportunities are reasonable. I live in a part of the community where we have multifamily and we have apple orchards nearby. We have mobile homes. We have R110, and it's a great part of town. I love it there. And the people are, there's some variety, and I think it's a good thing for my kids to see that there's people from different walks of life. And frankly, I think part of the problem we have with housing affordability is the whole not in my backyard mentality, and we've got to reject that. And I know I'm unpopular with some with that mindset, but I'm wholeheartedly in favor of this R16 opportunity. I do think it provides a middle ground where people aren't afraid of R3, that if you approve something that's less dense now, that in 10 years they can rip it down and throw up a crazy apartment complex. But I think this is a good, acceptable middle ground that works for everybody, personally.
I'd just like to thank, I think, the staffers. I mean, this is, I think, exactly what we asked for, planning commission, and so thank you. I think it falls in line and tracks well to R18. I think and I know this is just a draft and we're still working on it, but I think it's just some clarification. When I read the area and frontage regulation section, it was unclear to me as far as that 6,000 square feet. Could you, just my question, I know the answer is no, but the way it was written, I would question if you could put 6 units on 6,000 square feet. I understand now after the discussion that that's a no.
You can't do that.
I understand.
Yeah.
But the way that it was written, that's how I read it, that it would be possible. So I think.
Yeah, you can only put 1 unit on 6,000 square feet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think just if we.
You'd need an acre to put 6 units.
Yeah, totally understand that.
Do you think that needs to be more clarified in this?
I do, yeah, just the way that the area and frontage regulations is written, that was not clear, and also it only states that it says minimum lot size for a detached single-family dwelling shall be 6,000 square feet. It doesn't state anything for attached. That clarity is missing, at least the way that I read it.
Does it make sense to you, though, that, if you can't have any more than 4 units attached, to have those 4 units, you would have to have 24,000 square feet. It's 6,000 feet per unit. They don't necessarily have to, they can sit on any size of property they want, but they still can't have more than 1 unit on 6,000 square feet.
And I think then, because it just states that that's for your
The density.
detached, it states that's for your detached single family dwelling. Minimum lot size for
Yeah,
your detached.
so that's for 1.
So it should be just dwelling, right? Minimum lot size for, well, I think it just needs to be a little clearer that.
Okay, let me work on that a little bit.
Yeah, whether you've got, and I know this is different than the other ones,
Yeah.
and so it's gonna take some finessing, but.
Yeah, I can work on that a little bit.
I do, some of the comments that were made, by the residents, by the public, the idea to rezone an area, so my stance would be, let the public know what the plan is. That way it's not, I guess I have concern if every single time it comes before planning commission, then it's, depending upon who's sitting up here at the time, is the way it's gonna go. And as a resident that had a change that affected our neighborhood, I would have just rather had, this is the plan, and this is what the city's planning on doing going forward. That way people can make decisions about if they want to stay in the neighborhood, if they don't, and they can plan rather than having to react to a decision that somebody made that was sitting up here. I know it's not here, I know it's in the city council, but whoever's sitting on the city council at the time. So that would be my thought.
So you like the idea of identifying areas in the city that this could be considered for?
I do.
Okay.
And then I appreciate the comment that we should update the master plan also to reflect the new zone. That makes sense to me, and I would agree with that. And I agree that I think some diversity is good for neighborhoods.
Okay.
One other thing, so you guys already have my proposed comments on there, and so I'm fine with the 30 feet. I was looking at the other zones and saw they were all 35, so that doesn't bother me to have that. There was a typo, it said 25 feet, but then
Yeah.
it said 20 feet. That was something Clark waived for me. He asked me to bring that up. Trying to think. And then the only other thing is in the purpose section, I added in multifamily, so it
Yes.
reflected the permitted uses.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, otherwise, I'm open to some of the suggestions on kind of clarifying the lot size that Justin suggested. Yeah.
I also think there's some credence to this idea of a minimum acreage to use this zone. Because it does seem pretty harsh that you just come in and somebody's got some remnant 6,000 square foot parcel and all of a sudden they slap a house on it. I think there's some credence to that we ought to consider, that there probably should be a minimum, maybe it's an acre, I don't know, but there probably should be a minimum size of property that to be considered for this zoning. For
And one thing,
rezoning.
yeah, and one thing, I guess, to that point, again, since this is tagged as a transitional zone, I think it would depend also on what's the neighboring property. I don't think we can completely put it in a vacuum of saying whatever project to be rezoned has to be minimum. I think we have to keep an idea, what's the surrounding nature of the surrounding parts of the city. I mean, if there's an R3 next to it, and then this is proposed to be an R16, and then the next is R110 or something, then that's the purpose of a transition zone, is to transition from that. But again, that's neither here nor there. I think that would just be part of that consideration of the limitations on where it can be used, is what's the surrounding character of the neighborhoods. But we don't have a quorum, so this is to be continued.
Yeah.
Okay. All righty, again, appreciate the comments. We do have one more. We are just rolling through, folks. We're doing great. So we have the last of our public hearings on the municipal code Title 7A chicken ordinance. This is coming back to us again after this was discussed both at.
This is
planning
just a
commission.
discussion. This is.
Oh, it's not?
We had a public hearing, so we're continuing to take all the comments from the public.
Okay, cool.
And continue
To build into it. Okay, well, you're free to continue through us with our meeting, but again, we do appreciate all participation in these public hearings. It's vital to have your input, your ideas, and I love hearing the different perspectives because it helps me rethink these issues. It really does. So we'll go ahead and we'll discuss now the ongoing additions, changes to the chicken ordinance. Sounds like you guys had kind of a cottage meeting a couple weeks ago, is that right?
Yes.
And
Are you guys, when I pulled it up on my iPad, it was different than how I pulled it up on my laptop. Are you guys seeing the comments in red?
I am able to, I see all of your comments. It's kind of weird. I have to roll over it. It doesn't look like it usually does, but I can see. I see some from George. I see some from you.
And there, it's how about Eileen, do you see Eileen's in red that are, like, I just want to make sure that they're clear to you that they're comments and not necessarily part of the.
So there are a couple places where it seemed pretty clear, like under the restrictions section.
Okay.
A couple of these seem pretty clear to me. Right.
I want to make sure that it was clear to you what was the comment and what was a part of the ordinance.
Well, it wasn't clear at first, and I emailed and I said, this doesn't look like it's ready to be voted on. And they said, no, this is just kind of the working process.
Okay, I just want to make sure so it's clear to you.
Yeah.
What you're looking at. That's all.
Yeah. So I think the last time we met, that one of the bigger concerns is having so many specific restrictions on how to build the coops and do the fencing and stuff. And so I think it's good that it's stripped back now to some essentials. Just a couple of comments or thoughts from me. Let's see, I have to look through my notes here. Give me 1 second. I think I have it somewhere else. Give me a moment here. Okay, so my first thing, I know in RS12, they already have kind of larger rights than this. So I would want to clarify that notwithstanding this ordinance, this code section does not limit the rights of those in RS12 or whatever other zones might have greater existing rights. Again, the intent of this is to make sure those who don't have any rights to chickens can have these rights, but we want to not limit RS12. So that would be, I would add that into A, is just that additional line. And then the only other thing is about the enclosure, says all chickens shall be contained at night within a proper coop or cage. I would add something along the lines that it's well maintained. We don't want dilapidated, falling apart, public health type issues, but I think this is going in a good direction.
I think it's a lot easier for a lot of residents to accept. I agree with the RS12, kind of keeping that separate. A couple of questions I had, or just maybe comments, in section G. So G3C, it says during culling of old chickens, there may be up to 1.5 times the normal allowed amount of chickens. My question would be, what defines the period of culling of old chickens? Is that, I don't have chickens, so I don't know, is that a day, is that a week, is it a month, is it a year? Just a thought, and I don't need a response, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, because I assume somebody, right, at some point will say.
That was one of the, I'll just tell you, that was one of the comments from individuals who has chickens. And sometimes during that certain period, they just don't do anything, so what do you do during that time when you still work state like that? How long can you continue? I think we set up the time
Yeah, I can just see somebody say, well, this is the period of culling whole chickens and it's 3 years, right?
20-year period.
Yeah, right, so
Yeah,
just-
I think it's just like a couple months or something like that.
And maybe that could be it, but in no event longer than 6 months or something.
It's time to reflect on why you're doing this in the first place.
Right.
I did pull up a bunch of other surrounding cities and it does align with a lot of what other cities are doing around us. The only last comment I have is the Fruit Heights Fowl Committee. If that's what the city wants to do, then great. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't want to have to manage that. It seems like a lot of, I don't know, seems like a lot of potential for just disaster.
Was that coming from?
That was actually
public?
a group of the public that said that they would want to be on that committee to go around and actually
instruct
or educate individuals if there were issues before it became a problem.
Interesting.
Which I agree with that. All right, so that is something that they.
It seems like a nightmare to try to manage. And
Right.
what are they actually instructing? And is it their opinion versus somebody else's opinion? And to me, it gets messy very quickly. Only comment additional about that, it stated the Fruit Heights Fowl Committee, but really it's only chickens because peafowl are not allowed, turkeys, geese, ducks. And so if we're calling, I would just suggest if we are going to keep it, let's call it Chicken Committee, because it is only about chickens, not fowls. That's all I got.
So we don't want the foul, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, okay, so Clark asked, he presented some of his ideas to me since he couldn't be here, and we'll probably have a chance for him to chime in since we don't have the quorum here, but he does like the direction it's taken, is concerned about enforcement and how that's going to work out. What are you guys' thoughts at this point on enforceability and the challenges for staff dealing with this moving forward? What are some of the helpful things here? What are the nightmares you're seeing?
Well, I think it would be very, having some rules does help. I will tell you that, but it'll be a challenge no matter what.
It is a very.
It just will be.
It is a charged issue, as we learned.
It will be impossible to enforce these regulations. I mean, when you make a statement that a coop has to be well maintained, that's impossible. For 100% compliance to that, chicken coops stink. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They're going to stink. And the best kept chicken coop is 1 out of 100. And so we already don't enforce, there's many things that go unenforced. You're just adding more things that are impossible to enforce. It's like, in a city this size, it's an impossible task.
Can I ask what brought this? Like, if we don't believe we'll be able to enforce it, I don't know that we need to pass it, would be my thought. But what brought this originally before planning commission last time?
There's just, I'll tell you, there's individuals that have chickens and there's zones that's not allowed. I mean, we have one zone, well, 2 zones, we have agricultural.
And RS12.
RS12.
Yeah.
That's our 2 zones where chickens are allowed. Individuals do have them in different zones.
Well,
I'll take that a step further. This is the way that it was presented to Darren, is that we have people that are doing it now illegally, and we're not enforcing them, so why not just pass an ordinance to make it allowed? So
the rule keepers.
We're admitting that we're not enforcing the rules now, so how are we possibly going to enforce more rules?
Well, I guess the question then is, are there point blank limitations we need in here? Because I think at one point we talked about there's certain zones on the lower end, like this RS or R16. I would say R16 no, R3 no, maybe even R18. I don't know. No offense to any R18s that are represented here, but
So it was, sorry. So if, it sounds like staff, it was presented to you guys. Is that correct?
From the
Yeah,
public.
we didn't bring this up. They came to our table.
So somebody did public write this and say, hey, we want to present this? Or-
No, and this is not the first time that this has come up in other times, and so there are people that are just illegally keeping chickens that are not supposed to be keeping them.
Yeah.
And so they're saying, well, if we're not gonna go out and tell those people to keep them, we might as well just make it legal.
Well, and I track that because there are rule keepers in the world, and there's rebels in the world. The rebels are gonna do what they want, the rule keepers are gonna follow any rule on the recording. So this is helpful for people who are like, hey, I don't do this because it's against the rule.
Right.
And being a rule keeper, life's hard.
Yeah,
You follow rules.
Yeah. But it will just be, it will be difficult. I mean, there's no zoning enforcement officer. I mean, everybody in this city has got a full-time plus job. So, who's gonna go out and say, your chicken coop stinks? It's much easier to go out and say, you can't have chickens at all, get them out of here.
Which is as it's currently written, you're saying?
Yeah.
So does staff have a recommendation on this?
I don't know, Darren.
I think the staff is gonna just follow the direction of the planning commission and council.
Yeah.
Go through. We've had some good public hearings, we've had a lot of individuals interested in an ordinance so they can have chickens that don't have them right now. And I think that's part of this whole thing, is just being, is this something that we have to deal with? Yes. Every city along the Wasatch Front has had to deal with chickens. Right. 4 weeks ago, it was in the Ogden Standard, South Ogden, is having issues with chickens.
Right.
Not having an ordinance. And Loman, I think, is right there with them in another community. All right there are having the issues. They're going through the same thing we are. Of trying to put something in place so the residents can legally do.
I think there's some issues for pause. I mean, we created an R112, which is mirrors an RS12.
Minus the livestock.
Verbatim, minus the livestock. And so people have bought or built homes in an R112 saying, I'm here because there's no animals, and there's no possibility of animals. And now we go back and say, now we're gonna introduce animals? That feels like that feels like a slap in the face to, there's probably some individuals that aren't gonna be happy about that, but there are individuals that have reached out and said, I wanna be able to keep a chicken and I'm in an R112. But that was the purpose for the zone. And so I think there are some considerations, but I mean, I don't have any opinion one way or the other, whether somebody has a chicken or not. But just know this, that through long experience, chickens breed other problems. You will have rats, you will have skunks, you will have raccoons. There's no way around it.
Yeah. Yeah.
This city already has a problem with raccoons and rats.
Yeah.
There's no public hearing on this, right? No comment.
No, this one is just more general, but I think, if it comes before us, once it's finalized, I'm sure there'll be another public hearing, right? Or is this, or we've already had a sensory public hearing and received input?
We should.
We should have another public hearing about it, but I think the planning commission needs to have it laid out and very direct, and taking the comments that we've received from the public. And making sure those are laid out in that discussion, so if we do have it, it doesn't blow up again and go completely backwards.
Right.
And we make no progress.
So I think in that line of thinking, then perhaps if we could get a Word version of this, and then off the record, we can start redlining and start massaging it into a cohesive, workable situation. Again, my real feedback is this shouldn't impact RS12 because RS12 has greater rights, or agriculture, whatever the.
Yeah, it doesn't.
And then I think on the other end, we then cap at what is the lowest size of a zone that we permit. And I would say,
I think it does currently says.
Kevin, if we take what,
oh, good, okay.
if you take what you just said right there, that this doesn't impact RS12 or greater, or shouldn't. And whether you're on one side of the fence on the R112, let's just take that out of it, and we're not gonna allow it on 8,000 foot or less. Now you're doing this whole thing for R110.
R1, well, we were doing it for R112 and R110, right? Because R112 can't technically do it right now. I think, yeah, essentially.
So you're potentially doing all this for a pretty small.
So one point of clarification I want to just ask. The difference between R12 and RS12 is farm animals, but I think it's more than just chickens. It's like, man, there's
goats.
so it's not, it's a little bit, just to clarify, it is a little bit.
I'm in RS12 and I one day want this, so.
To me, it's unimaginable. To me, it is, but I'm not a chicken expert.
Yet, we will all be chicken experts by the time we figure this out, thanks to our lovely public. Because you guys have taught us a lot about this, and that's been helpful. So I think that'd be my thought, is if we can get a Word copy, and then working offline in the next month to kind of get some comments on here. And I thought there were some great helpful comments from the city council that remain in this document that we can look to and rely on as well. So yeah, Flo and George and Gary all gave some comments as well. So that'd be my thought, is we hash it out, work on it, and then again, if you guys are getting some input from fellow cities on what they've successfully seen, which it sounds like no one successfully has dealt with chickens in the state of Utah at this point. But if you have any feedback, we'd love to get that, obviously.
So we'll send out a Word document to each of the members. If we could have like a deadline to have that back.
So did you say the 16th is our next meeting, May 16th?
That's a Thursday. We can either do Tuesday
or Thursday,
or Thursday. I will leave that up to you, which one works the best, and we'll do that.
Let's shoot that on the email, just because I don't have my calendar pulled up right now. So let's look at that, and then maybe we would just have a deadline 1 week before.
If you do that, I can put all the comments together and then send it out. Here's all the comments.
Yeah.
Please, when we get here, this is our discussion items.
Okay.
Finish the project.
Yeah, I'm open to that. Does that sound good to you, Justin? Sounds great. And the other guys didn't show up, so it doesn't matter. We're making the decision without them. We can vote on that. Okay. All right. Thanks for staying through the marathon, guys. This was a big one. Let's go ahead. There's no ordinance review other than what we just did. There's no tabled items. I don't think is there any other, I mean, we just talked through calendar. I think we're good to close the meeting. So I can accept Justin's his motion to close the meeting.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to end.
And I will second it. Unanimous. Ayes. All right, thanks everybody.